Welcome to Big Little Stories. I'm Ivy Sharmetz. My guest today is someone that I have known for a very long time and someone who I was honored to work with on many great projects. John Bathke is an award-winning reporter whose work has given voice to artists, performers, and creatives across the country. I like to say from rehearsal rooms to red carpets, John brings empathy, insight, and genuine curiosity to every story he tells. John, I am so excited you are here today. Thank you so much for making the time to be with me.
I love seeing you always, and I love being here to share with you today.
So I'm going to start with this because one of the things that I love about your work, that I've always loved about you, is that, a lot of times when you hear entertainment reporting, you think of things that might be a little superficial or sometimes gossipy, but that is not you. You have a way, and I've seen the way you prep for interviews and the way you get ready. You report about how the arts connect us, and you always manage to find deep meaning in all of that work that you do. So can you just, I know that has to be a conscious decision for you, so talk to me about that.
Because everybody involved in entertainment is a real person. And when you focus on the gossip of it, when you focus on just the celebrity of it, that's one little part of a picture. But these are real people, and their job is to entertain an audience of real people. And so you have to keep both of those things in mind, at least I do when I'm working. And it's about understanding that person. We have our relationships with art and artists are very personal, even if you've never met the artist. Think about how people who love Bruce Springsteen talk about Bruce Springsteen. They may never meet him in their life, but the music and the art means so much to them.
Yeah.
So people react in a very personal way and connect in very personal ways to people who bring entertainment. And so for me, I feel the job is to bring out the personal in the artist. It's more about the why and not the how. It's about understanding them as a person. And that's what I made my goal to be.
But John, you interview people that other people have interviewed before, and yet every time you do that, I feel like you get something that they haven't shared before because you build this trust. How do you do that? Teach me, John.
Well, you know very well, and for yourself, and you have seen how I work. But I have come to tell people that I read energy and use it. So it's about from the moment you walk in the room with that person to try to connect and to be who you are. So they have a permission in a way to be who they are. And you start from even before hello, and I'm thinking about a moment. I was interviewing Shaka Khan. And a great artist and very famous. And it was a very hectic moment for her. And we had a very limited amount of time, just a few moments with her. And she had an entourage of people, and she was in a speaking engagement, and we were doing the interview, and then she was going to do a full concert. And I could see that she was just being pulled 10 different directions and was frazzled. And now she's got to do an interview too with this guy, and all of that. And when she sat down for the interview to be mic'd up, I let her know that I had just learned something about the life of a big celebrity on a busy day. And I said, I understand. I see all the pressure you're under today. I see what you have to do. And it changed the dynamic on the spot because she knew I want to get what I want to get and I'm going to leave. I had respect for her as an artist. I had respect for the craft of what I was doing. And we made the most of those 5 minutes as an interview. And it was great.
And you had respect for her as a person, right? You saw her as a human being who was having a day.
Yeah. I mean, she was, in the life of a big personality, we often see just one part of that. We see them on the red carpet or we see them at an event or something, but they have a life like everybody else. They have deadlines to make. They got a concert to do. They got a flight to catch. So you have to be respectful of people's time, their energy, um, and their intellect and their talent.
How?
And I think that comes from a personal place for me. I want those things from other
Yeah,
people for myself.
yeah,
And so I want to give that.
yeah. How did you come to this? I mean, you are one of the most highly regarded entertainment reporters in the tri-state area, but you kind of grew up a long way from here.
I did. And no connection to show business or the arts whatsoever. I grew up in the Midwest, in the upper Midwest, and went to college there and then went to graduate school in the Midwest. And it was not in the beginning in my mind that I was going to cover the arts or that I was going to cover entertainment or any of that. But you know what I did have? From the time I can remember, certainly well before I went to school, I was fascinated with television, and I
Mm.
lived inside that screen. And I didn't even go to school yet, and I had memorized the daytime network TV schedule. I
Wow.
always wanted to watch TV. I wanted to be in front of the TV, and I somehow projected myself at 4 or 5 years old into that box. And I really wanted to watch the talk shows that had stars on and the game shows that had stars on. That's what
Mm.
I would ask to watch. And I just sat there listening. I mean, I was so young that I actually thought the people on TV could see me
Oh,
watching them.
wow.
And I remember one time just sitting there and I looked over to my mom and I said, "Can he see?" Because the news anchor was looking at the screen and I didn't want to move because I thought, well, they can see me. They see me looking at them. I mean, that's how young I was. But I was fascinated by just this idea of people talking to each other on television. And, you know, I was truly 5 years old, 6 years old, and I had never been to California, but I could tell you all kinds of things about Palm Springs. It was sunny, there were stars, they had pools, there was golf. Um, it was probably fancy because there were stars there. I didn't know what Palm Springs was or even California, but I had heard stars talking about it
Yeah.
on shows. And so I just remembered all of that,
Who were your
and then
favorites? Who were some of your favorites?
talk show hosts
Yeah.
or
Hmm.
stars. Oh gosh. Um, it was the very end of, let's see, so it would have been the end of like the run of Dick Cavett,
Mm.
or the end of the time that Mike Douglas was on the air. But I'll tell you something. If you watch my interviews, um, to this day, I feel, and I didn't notice this for a long time, but now that I look at them, you see the influence
Hmm.
of how they talk to people and famous people and about their work and about other things. It sort of, has uh, really became ingrained in me at a very early age. And of course, David Letterman. And later, when I could stay up later, it was David Letterman or Johnny Carson or, um, the late night host became Joan Rivers. They became real influences of mine and people that I loved to watch. That was very early on.
So when you're a kid watching, and I apologize, my phone rang. When when you are a kid watching this, are you thinking to yourself, this is what I want to do?
Not consciously.
No.
No, I just enjoyed it. I thought I was going down another path. I didn't even know journalism at that time. I didn't know whatever. I just enjoyed it. It fascinated me. I didn't even in the beginning of college plan to be a journalist. I had another major undergrad. I wasn't even thinking about journalism. And it was other people telling me
Mm.
that you should go into TV, you should be a journalist, you should. It was not something that I had thought about. And then I went to graduate school for it and then went into the industry and worked and eventually worked to the point where I was heavily doing entertainment journalism, which is what I really loved and wanted to do. But no, and I wasn't, and I didn't feel um, creative enough.
Mm.
It's so funny. I didn't feel I had the
Wow.
creativity. Actually, I'm just thinking of this as we talk. Um, it is astonishing it is astonishing that I became an arts and entertainment journalist because I was the kid in school, all through school. If the teacher would say in the morning, let's say, this afternoon we're going to have an art project, and everybody would sort of perk up, I would have an anxiety attack.
Wow.
And
Really?
I would, I'm not even kidding, as
Wow.
kindergarten, first grade, second grade, I would become physically ill at the thought that I would have to draw or use that glue gun, the glue, I hated that thing and cut paper and all of that because I felt that every other kid in the class was so much better at it than I was. It was
Wow.
so easy. Their things turned out better. And so I couldn't, and I remember a moment that happened to me, first, second grade, whatever it was, where we were drawing and we had to draw people. That was some part of an assignment. And I was drawing stick figures. And the teacher next to me said, and I don't want to see any stick people. You can all do better than that. And that's what I was drawing. And I thought, she's talking to me.
Wow.
I'd have been, but at the time, she's talking to me and I can't do any better. Is everybody better at this than I am? And I felt it became so ingrained in me. And actually, it was during and this stuck with me, just that memory of that
Yeah.
stuck with me. And years later, I was interviewing somebody who was a psychoanalyst, and I happened to mention that story. And she said, "Well, you have to go back to that moment and rewrite it, and you'll be fine." I thought, "What are you talking about? I don't understand that. That my head doesn't work that way." And it was during the pandemic, very early in the pandemic, and I was interviewing an art teacher who was doing free art classes on Facebook for students after
I
school or
remember that
something.
story.
Well, and it was what you don't know and what no one knows is that it was a huge moment for me because I decided to draw along. They were learning to draw faces, and I decided to draw along with the class. And I set up a camera to watch me drawing along. It's a caricature face, it's a cartoon face, but I followed line by line,
Wow.
nose and eyes, hair, and I drew this face. I had never drawn a thing since second grade. And in that moment,
Wow.
on TV,
Wow.
for me, and not anyone else knowing, but for me knowing, I had gone back to second grade and I had rewritten that moment. And yeah, maybe I am creative. Maybe I can handle this. And even, Emmys on the shelf for work in television
Yeah.
didn't take away that feeling that, oh, I can't do what somebody else can do. And so in that, it was such a powerful moment, and I have not shared this with anyone until right now. Um, it was just such a healing and powerful moment, and it also speaks to how art can heal you.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I came to understand that a little bit more in that moment. So that's just I know that's a long answer to your question about how
But
I
but
got
but no,
part
I'm
of.
curious though because if it wasn't something that it wasn't exactly the path that you set out on, right? The reporting and doing the interviews that you did. Was there a moment when you were doing an interview when you thought to yourself, "This, I'm exactly where I'm meant to be"?
Yes. And it was when I was interviewing one of the interviewers who influenced me, Joan Rivers.
Wow.
And I grew up watching her and watching her interview people and watching her behind the desk on the late night talk show. And when I sat down at a comedy club to interview her, I was like, this has come so full
Yeah.
circle.
Wow. Wow.
This this is this is the moment. I mean, I'm interviewing a person who influenced me in interviewing, you know, um, and then to have heard from her later um, to say, I think you're a really great interviewer.
Wow.
was was huge. I mean, that was probably the moment.
Well, and then I just going to add to that really quick to say that then there was another time when you and I went to Joan
Yeah.
Rivers' apartment together to interview her, and to be in her presence, you feel you kind of feel the greatness of who she was, and the care that she had for even even people like us, right, who were there to interview her. She was so kind and so generous. So thank you for
And a
sharing that.
person of great commitment. Everything about her screamed commitment.
Yeah,
In her comedy, in her
yeah,
uh, television talk shows, in her look. I mean,
yeah,
everything screamed commitment, and that's something else that I learned from her
yeah.
and other great people. It's about the commitment that you have to what you're doing.
We're going to take a very short break, John. When we come back, I want to talk a little bit more with you about the arts and that human connection that you so beautifully highlight all the time. So we'll take a quick break. We'll be right back. John, I know this is something that you enjoy talking about, and I love hearing you talk about this. But the idea of the arts as a connector and of that shared humanity by sharing an experience, a live audience is you're sitting there and you're sharing a unique experience that is unique to only those people in that audience. Talk to me about that and just why that's so meaningful.
Because it happens one time. And if you're at a concert, if it's 50 people or 500 people or 50,000 people at the stadium, um, that is never going to happen again.
Mm.
You have as personal as our connection to the arts and to entertainment is, and if you have a show for 1,000 people, 1,000 different shows were seen that night because everybody came in with their own background and their mood that night and everything else. And so that influences how they see the show. But it is also a collective
Mm.
experience. And so you have this group of people who are watching this artist perform or this show being performed, and it's live. It's never going to be exactly the same.
Right.
And out of the billions of people in the world, you, group of 1,000 people, are the only people who will ever share in this experience. It will never be a show exactly like it because we're human. We don't do exactly the same show every time, you know? And so, and the energy of the audience and who you're sitting next to and the feeling in the room, we are a part of that. We give off something that creates a feeling in the room. It's not one-sided from the artist. It is the audience too, who influences the show and your feeling about the show.
Yeah.
You know, did they
And
laugh at everything? Were they into the
well,
music?
and you even hear artists say they can tell when there's a good crowd tonight. It's not such a great audience tonight. It affects their performance as well.
Yes. I mean, imagine coming out and the audience is like, ugh,
Right.
and how do you not take that personally? Are you
Right.
doing something wrong on the stage?
Right.
So
Right.
there is a flow, and you can feel it. And also, the other thing that I love about it is you can be sitting in an audience, and maybe it's the person you brought with you. Maybe they're not so into it. Maybe they're not connecting with the show in the same way you are. But you can be near someone who is maybe loving the show as much as you, feeling something similar as you, and somehow you're going to lock eyes with that person. Somehow you're going to connect with that person because through this art, you are being drawn to somebody else who's feeling a lot of what you're feeling. And you're probably going to meet that person before the night's out. I mean, it's that kind of magic that I love about being at a show or in the theater.
uh, the arts involves all different things, right? Not just performances, but painting, sculptures, dance, music. What do you think makes a performance or a piece of art good? Is there an objective good that art can be, or is it completely subjective?
I think it's completely subjective.
Mm.
I think if you ask 10 people what they think of a statue, you'll get 10 different answers, and 10 different people have a different emotional response to it, no emotional response to it,
Mm.
uh, walk by it and never notice it. Other people can look at it for hours. I think it's totally subjective. And I think, I don't know if there's a good when we say it's good if we think it's good, and someone else says it's bad because they think it's bad, you
Yeah.
know. But I think art that provokes a response
Mm.
is what you might say is good art. Art that provokes a response, that is not wallpaper. You know, that there is some response to the art, that it ignited something in maybe not everyone, but it ignited something in the people who saw it.
Yeah.
And you may connect with it. They may not have loved it, but it ignited something in them. And that's when you know you have reached people through the art.
What keeps you excited about this work?
New, what's next, who I
Mm.
want to interview, um, uh, what's all the things that are going to affect the arts, whether it's AI or
Mm-hmm.
all these things that are happening now. How is that going to affect what is on the stage? And also making arts and entertainment accessible by just talking about it, reporting about it. You know, sometimes art, Broadway theater, which I've covered a great deal, and can seem intimidating to people. The arts can be intimidating to people, but it shouldn't be. Art is for everyone.
Mm.
You know what makes it what can be making it sort of seem exclusive, of course, is the prices and the
Right.
ticket prices. And so in my work, I have always tried to focus as much as I can on also telling people, well, here's how you can see this show for less.
Right.
Here are things that are free that you can see, because art should not be elite. It should not, the door to art should never be closed to any human being, because it can brighten their life. It can change their life. It can bring enjoyment to their life on a day when they desperately needed it.
Wow.
And no one should have that door closed to them. And that's how I feel very strongly about art and performance. And I want everybody who wants to be able to see something to be able to see it, because I think it really enriches their life.
And you've done such a good job of doing that and promoting that. How do people find you?
Uh, well, they can, my Instagram at John Bathke, or X, John Bathke Live. LinkedIn, you can find me lots of places. And I hope they will check in with me. And if they see something they like, I hope they'll tag me and let me know.
Awesome. John, we end all of these shows with 3 big little questions. We'll do rapid fire. Are you ready?
I'm ready. I don't know what they are.
John, how do you get yourself out of a bad mood?
um, Chocolate.
I was going to guess that, actually. What is your go-to karaoke song?
Um, oh God, that's a great question. Um, Come back to me. Ask me that again.
Okay, then last one is, what's your favorite spot in New Jersey? Do you have a favorite place, restaurant, beach, park?
I love the Jersey City waterfront.
Yes, beautiful, beautiful. Have you thought of a karaoke song, or we're
Oh,
gonna have to come back to answer that question?
You know, what was I singing the other day? I was singing, and now I'm trying to remember what I was singing the other day. You know, there's a million. You know, the thing is, if I sing karaoke, that's when the audience clears out. Nothing clears a room faster than me singing karaoke. That's a fact. There's no coming back. There's no coming back from that.
Fair.
There's no rewriting the history and drawing and connecting your own creative self. That ain't gonna happen. It's just not gonna happen. But for you, I would say my favorite is Jersey Girl.
Oh, well, thank you, John. You know that's close to my heart, so I appreciate that. Thank you so much for being here, John. I know you're busy. I appreciate you taking the time, and thank you for everything that you've done. I'm so grateful to have gotten to work with you on so many great projects, and I just appreciate your friendship. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ivy.
And that will do it for this week's Big Little Stories. I'm Ivy Charmetz. Be sure to check us out on Instagram at Big Little Stories Show. I'll see you next time.